Hello everybody, and today we're gonna talk about retouching. Those of you that have watched my previous retouching videos probably know that I believe that I'm pretty light on retouching, meaning I don't try not to go overboard and I'm trying to keep things looking natural. The way I see it, the goal of retouching is to make an image appear not retouched, meaning you're not trying to turn image into something it is not, or the person into something not, but simply trying to change, a few things that maybe the client is not happy with, the client is self-conscious about, or sometimes well, I mean, of course it depends what you want. I mean, you can go, if the artistic concept requires you to turn somebody into plastic, you can do that, but that's in portraiture. I think it is usually unnecessary. So today I'm going to talk about retouching the under eyes. Given that I have picked an image of a young lady who really does not need any retouching virtually whatsoever. She just has a little bit of kind of a shadow and different skin texture under an eye. Partially I'm doing it because I don't want to put any client on the spot, any client that think that they need some under eye work. I don't want to embarrass anybody inadvertently, so I picked the client that really doesn't need anything, but nonetheless the process is the same for everybody. So anyway, imagine you encounter a client and the client asks you to remove some under eye stuff. There is really a lot of different ways to do this, and for the longest time I've been struggling with different ways of doing that. The one that I oftentimes did was basically dodge and burn. For those of you who are not familiar, basically dodge and burn works like this. You just wait. I'm sorry, I didn't need the layer mask. You just create a curve layer, and we're gonna lighten it up like this. So lighten up like right about there. And then we're gonna we're just gonna fill it with black. So select all, Control All, delete. And then I take white low flow brush. So this is a paintbrush that is white. It's low flow, 4%, and normal mode. Anyways, and with this I'm starting on the mask layer. I start just painting the under eye here, and I'm basically like revealing some of that lightening that I've masked away, and I'm bringing it back. And that's one of the ways to do it. It's absolutely not the wrong way. In fact, that's probably the rightest way there is. However, sometimes depending on what you're doing, it can be time consuming, and depending on the amount of texture that you're trying to cover up, it might not be very, it's not always effective. So just here we go. So before and after, that's very quick, but obviously, I mean, I would have spent more time on that if that's the way I was doing it. Is pretty time consuming method if you're doing it the right way. And as a side note, you would know that once you start changing the tonalities, the color changes a little bit as well. So one of the good ways to do that would be just to create a new layer, change the color mode to to color. So now that's my color, and I'll replace it color. And once again, I would pick white low flow brush from here, but I would change the color to, say, this one. And then I would carefully just brush it over. And once again, it's very low flow, 4%. And correct any irregularities in color, because it's not only tonalities, there is some color work as well. So that's basically how it works, and I correct separately the color and separately this. And let me group them into, say, heel. And here we go, here's before and after. Work with under eyes. This is one method, but I'm going to remove that for now. I'm going to show you a different one, the one that I really work with most of the time now, simply because it's a lot faster. And speed is oftentimes matters. Speed does not necessarily matter when you work on works of art. If you're creating a work of art for yourself, then ultimately you're looking for perfection. You're pursuing perfection. That's kind of what separates commercial work from artwork in my mind. when I work for a client, most of the time is something on my mind, meaning I cannot spend 2-3 hours per each image and be successful commercially. It just does not work like that. I mean, I have limits. The less time I spend on an image, the better. So I'm always looking for compromise, time versus results, meaning I don't want to just blur the skin and be done with it, just do really hack job, still have a brand name. But on the other hand, I don't want to spend hours per each image. For this reason, I mean, one of the methods that I do is I'm about to demonstrate. It's kind of stamping away the texture. So first I'm going to create a new layer, and we'll call it whatever, under eye. Then we're going to take a low flow stamp. Low flow stamp is not a paintbrush, it's a stamp tool. It's once again flow at 4%. And this is important, it samples current and below, meaning we're actually sampling from the background and not just a blank layer. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sample the texture that is okay by my standard right here. And I'm going to, at low flow at 4%, I'm going to carefully stamp it right over here. So I'm cloning it a little bit, but it's at low flow. And very important thing is that once I start cloning, once I push that mouse button, I do not let go. I have to do it in one motion. I'll explain to you in a second why, but just keep it in mind, bear with me, it has to be one motion. So, and this is what I do. And stop. I let go. This is it. Now, as you can see, this is way too much. I mean, it doesn't look like she has anything under the eye, and this is just goofy to me. So we're going to create a mask. Once again, select all, delete so that it's blacked out. And once again, with white low flow brush, I'm going to brush in on the masking as much of this as I want so that it looks natural. I don't want it to look really bizarre. People have a shadow under an eye. It's impossible not to have one. So it's just like, remove it, but try to be as realistic as possible. There we go. So this is it. So what I did is I cloned her own skin texture onto the texture that I was trying to replace. Because I did it in one motion, there is really no blur. And so it's not just blurred and goofy layer, but it is, it's still, all the texture is still there. However, it's completely hiding everything we're trying to remove. I can do the same with her scar if I wanted to. My logic with scars is not removing things, but if I really was desperate to remove it, I would have done the same thing. So select the layer itself. Right now it's actually all hidden, so let me just create a new layer for this one. New layer, and that will be the scar. And let's take that low flow stamp. Once again, 4%, current and below. And here we are. I'm going to copy this texture. And I can remove it completely or close to it. And if you look carefully, it all looks still reasonably realistic. There's a little bit of lightening just because I was copying from slightly lighter area. Let's undo this and see how I can do a little bit different. If I copy from around here. And here we have a little bit of desaturation, which can be fixed with a color layer if I really wanted to. So the goal is once again to do it in one movement. Well, here I just separated and did top and bottom separately. So you can see there is a color difference. Once again, I'm going to create a color layer. So color. Switch that to color mode. Take white low flow. Copy the color from the surrounding area. Brush it in here. There's slightly changing color, so I'm copying different. There we go. Now we can barely see it now. Barely. But once again, it's way too much for me. So I'm gonna combine this, group this, call it scar. We're gonna mask the whole thing again. And with white low flow brush, I'm gonna just start eliminating just a little bit, just to tone it down a touch, as much as I want. Now, so here's before and after. Scar made slightly less apparent. Now, what would happen if I did not do so? Like, this is the under eye. So let me hide it all once again, and let me show you what happens if you don't do it in one smooth motion. So we're gonna create a new layer again, and it's gonna be blurry crap. There we go. And so I'm gonna take that low flow brush, and now instead of doing it in one smooth motion, I'm copying, but I'm doing it in sections. 1 push, 2 push, 3 push, 4 push, 5 push, 6, 7, 8, 9. Doesn't look really too bad, but if you zoom in, you start seeing that this is all crisp and this is all a little blurry, because I just put way too many different little layers of masking on top of each other, and the edges of the brush, because the edges of my brush are very soft, you know, cause this thing. So even though from far away you might not notice any difference, if you print it large or look at it up close, it would be very apparent. It's like, that's just blurred background. In comparison, the one that I did, there is really no blur at all. The one that I did in one smooth motion, it's all nice and crisp. It's the same level of crispness, and once I do the final sharpening of the image, you'll not be able to tell this two parts apart whatsoever. So in this case, I feel like mission accomplished. The client is happy. I removed the little under eye thing that they were not happy with, while not making it look like it was retouched at all. So here we are. I can show you other different applications of this method, but this is one of the fast way that I retouch away any kind of major area blemishes. Not like a little pimple where I would just use like a simple heel brush, but when I have an area to deal with, this is one of the things that I do. All right, thank you so much. Hopefully you found it helpful.